Welcome to In the North Bank. Another edition of the Dream Arsenal squad. Now, I'm loving these series. They've been absolutely brilliant, but no more so than today because I've finally been able to get a hold of Adam, who I listen to all the time on his pods. Adam, how are you, bro?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on, and I really appreciate the support and you listening to our pods. It's always nice to hear. How are you doing this morning, mate?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for this. Now, obviously, I've had to make up the slides for you for the podcast today, and I know your team, and I think that you have went a little bit outside the box with this, Adam. So I'm really can't wait to get into this. But just before we move on, you dropped the podcast Friday. Was it Friday?
Yes, Thursday or Friday. I can't remember. I kind of lost track of days. Bank holiday weekends always completely throw you. So yeah, we had one out a couple of days ago. We did an end of season review. So it's myself and Jamie Kent do the Arsenal Therapy Pod, and we put an end of season one out before the final game of the season, because I mean everything is kind of secure now. It feels like the right time to put it out. And it also feels like next week we're just going to be into transfer madness. So we thought we would reflect a bit on what's going on and have a chat about that, because there have been highs, there have been lows, and there's been new discoveries along the way. It's been a very wild season, let's just say.
Has been absolute has been. Going on to the transfer window opening, I take it that you'll be putting out a fair bit of content
Yeah, we
regarding that.
will. It's one of those. It's finding that balance of cutting through the noise. So we will be doing a scouting pod. So that will probably come out through the week, and most likely cut down into YouTube. So that'll be myself and Ben Mattinson doing that. But yeah, we've got quite a bit of content coming up. We've got some stuff with some people that know the academy inside out. So I want to do a bit of a focus on that over the
Fantastic.
summer as well, because I think it's important to focus on what you've got as well as just external factors, because
Yep.
there's a lot of talent coming through at Arsenal, none more so than Ethan and Miles, who are still very much in the development path, but also Max Diamond, who's currently away with England under 17s. And
Yep.
it looks like he's going out of that tournament, but he is someone that's on a very, very clear pathway to first team football at Arsenal.
I think you've just gave a hint away of one of the players that are going to be in your 25-man squad.
Possibly, possibly.
But we will get to that. Right. So flipping over, this is what we're trying to achieve, Adam. We need a 25-man squad, three goalkeepers as standard, two players for every position, and at the very end, you're going to promote two academy players to come up. So this is what you're trying to achieve. Now, out of that, just before we go to player sales, uh, we are trying to, or Adam is a way to give us a squad or Arteta squad that's going to win the quadruple. So no pressure at all, Adam. No pressure whatsoever.
Big ask that.
Yeah,
I'd take either the Prem or the Champions League.
yeah, I would as well. I would as well, but it's good to be greedy. So moving on to your player sales, you want to speak us through this, please, Adam?
Yeah, so I've started with Jakob Kiwior. So these values are based on Transfermarkt, as we agreed before the show. So it's not just us making up values. But
Yeah.
I've gone with Kiwior not because I want him to go. I've actually never wanted him to go. I think he's got the one weakness I've always said about Kiwior is his aggression, but he's a very smooth mover when he gets going. He's got a great passing range. I think the issue with Kiwior has been he kind of lets the situation deal with him rather than being aggressive and smashing his man at times. But I think we're seeing a different side to him now that he's playing in his real position. But I think for him, he probably needs to move on for the good of his career. He wants to play every week. He's got the talent to do it, and the interest will be there. Gabriel's injury has probably knocked 10 million onto his value, which is very good news for us. And I think not just within Italy, but there will be teams that will be looking at Kiwior possibly in the Premier League now. Bournemouth have just sold Dean Huijsen for 50 million, and they have money to spend. They're also going to sell Semenyo, Kirkaz. So they're a team that are going to be fairly well armed financially. So I would keep an eye on Kiwior. I think he could be one where a few people will be competing for his signature. Karl Hein has had a good season on loan. Karl Hein, actually. So he's one that I think we could make a bit on. I wouldn't actually be against keeping him as a backup keeper if we weren't able to get someone like Juan Garcia. But look, at the end of the day, it's pure profit with an academy player. Thomas Partey on a free transfer. I think it's one of those that it's maybe time to part ways. I think there's a lot around Partey, but on a pure playing front, we see his mobility decrease and we see elements of his game maybe not as smooth as they once were. And I think sometimes you just need to be slightly ruthless at this stage. We see City letting De Bruyne go. They did it with Aguero as well. And sometimes you just need to regenerate the squad a bit. And I think that sixth position is somewhere that we are looking at this summer to rebuild. And Jorginho, same thing. I'm sad to see him go. Great servant, but I think the time has come, unfortunately, that again he's physically declined quite a bit. He's in his 30s now. Kieran Tierney, he's one as well. I'm sure as a Scotsman, you're disappointed to see him go.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, his redemption this season has been quite impressive. I've enjoyed him coming in. It's been really nice to see him back play and showing that he can offer something to this team. And to be honest, I think it's a reflection that he could have been used better when he was being forced to play as an inverted fullback. I think this is Arteta's growth as a manager. This season, he hasn't asked Tierney to do Zinchenko things or Lewis Skelly things or Calafiori things. He's asked Tierney to do Tierney things. And had he have done that in the 22-23 season, we would have had variety instead of Tierney being exposed for the things he couldn't have done. And I think it's a real shame, but I think Tierney's injuries have ultimately been the thing that's cost him. And I think it's also cost him his development as well, because I think people forget when you're injured a lot, you spend a lot of time on the treatment table. So that means you're not on the training ground. You're not getting that advice or learning from your coaches and teammates. And you're also not on the pitch developing what you could be. And I think ultimately that's what slowed Tierney down. He did have a lot of injury troubles at Celtic as well. So this is a career-long issue. And I think he could have been a much better player than he ever became had it not have been for injuries. Neto, disaster of a loan. Sterling, let's not even get started on that. And yeah, that brings a total of 25 million just based on kind of what we agreed on for this pod.
Yeah, I see that was the thing that first shocked me, Adam, because we've done this with a few people and the player sales have been much greater. Where I feel that you're kind of not changing too much of the squad up, but like we'll go into the players like bringing in, but you're not. It's not a massive amount of players that you've got rid of. So I was actually surprised at that. On the Kieran Tierney, it's just a point I want to bring in. You're right about the inverted, and I kind of agree that I think Tierney, because he could give you a different dimension to a game, Adam. And I think Arsenal, maybe now, teams will know Arsenal are inverting because we don't have a player in the squad like Kieran Tierney. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. If you look at Calafiori when he came on against PSG, it was an overlap where he fizzed the ball into Saka and he missed that open goal. And that could have, I think if Saka scored that, we possibly go through, because I think PSG were really on the rocks. The minute they conceded, they panicked, and they really panicked. And I think not scoring that took the wind completely out of our sails. You could see how tired we were. And just having that ability to go forward and have someone fizz across into the box is something, it's old school football and it works.
It does, Adam. And I just feel now that like if teams are coming up against Arsenal, they know that like on the left-hand side, especially now, we're inverting. We're not going to have that width. We're not. And I think Martinelli's game kind of suffers through that as well, if I'm being honest as well, Adam. I think there's a part there with that. So, sorry.
I think some of Martinelli's best football has been played with Jesus. So with a player that drifts out to that side and gives him that extra support. I do think having Martinelli completely isolated against a low block exposes some of his weaknesses. Whereas if you can get Martinelli in space and get him into that half space as well and attacking the box, you can see what he can do. I think Martinelli's become vastly underrated by the Arsenal fan base. But it's also important to note on top of these sales, you've got the likes of Lokonga, Tavares, and those players who are moving on for
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I kind of forgot about that, but yeah, you're right. So this would actually add to your transfer kit. Right, we'll go into your players now. Some of these players, I've got to be honest, Adam, it is out the box, and I've not even really heard of them or watched them. So this will be interesting. Your first one.
Yeah, so Juan Garcia, he has had a stunning season at Espanyol. A big reason why they've stayed in La Liga this season. Final game of the season, he was held on the shoulders of the fans. They bombarded him. It was like I don't know if you remember when Alan Smith played his final game for Leeds before he went to United, and they realised where he was going. The fans surrounded him. They loved him. Everyone cheering him. It was a bit like that with Juan Garcia. He is, I would say, like a slightly taller version of David Raya. So he's someone that has that extra reach. He's phenomenal on the ball, big, powerful shot stopper, can ping the ball all over the park as well. And he's someone that, whilst he has conceded 47 goals this season, he's been the best player at his club. He's been a major reason why they've stayed up. And actually 47 goals for a club that has finished right down near the relegation places isn't that bad if you look at where Man United are this season, especially. But yeah, he's someone I think he could possibly be the best goalkeeper in the world. I would say, though, and I said this earlier in the season, I struggle to see why he would come to Arsenal to compete for number one when he could go to another club and be number one right now. So Aston Villa are in for him as well with Emi Martinez leaving. If I'm being completely honest and taking my Arsenal hat on, I think that if I was him personally, yes, he could be Arsenal's number one goalkeeper in a year, but he may not be. That's one of those, there's no guarantees with that. I'm a big fan of David Raya, and I think that he's had a bit of mental fatigue this season, and that's been an issue. But at the same time, it's having a keeper to compete with him. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing for Arsenal. We saw it with Raya and Ramsdale. It didn't work out. And I think Raya's best form only came when he knew he was number one. Repeating that situation may unsettle a lot. So I've got mixed feelings on this one. I think on a pure player potential and quality point of view, absolutely, this is a no-brainer. The price tag is very good. The issue is more around the emotional side of football and the bit that we don't often discuss, and that is the I guess the player development, the game time available, and just whether or not he would be happy when he's got opportunities elsewhere. So that would be my worry about signing someone like him. But on a pure quality basis, we could be signing someone who goes on to be a Manuel Neuer type keeper.
Yep. See, the thing, I agree. You broke that down perfectly. But I think personally, this season we've been lucky that David Raya never picked up an injury. Because
Absolutely.
if he had picked up an injury, we would probably been out of these Champions League places with what we had as backup. So I do hear what you're saying, and some other people think that he might be happy to come to Arsenal for that year, maybe 2 years of trying to compete with David Raya. But the belief on some other people is that they actually think that he could go on to become Arsenal's number one.
Yeah, I think it's also one of those that if you sign him and he does kick on at that point, there's a very good chance you're able to sell Raya in a year's time, and probably for a big fee, because he is one of the truly unique goalkeepers out there who can play with his feet, who's a very good shot stopper. His ability to claim crosses is up there with the very best in the world. So I think there's a lot of clubs would be looking at Raya as their number one if Garcia came in and took his place. So my only worry about this is how it could impact us over the course of the season if it unsettled Raya quite a bit and his performances dipped. However, there is the opposite, where it could be that Garcia comes in and the two of them really do push each other. I think one of the issues with Ramsdale was loved by the Arsenal fan base, and he was English. So the media were overly protective about that situation, versus I don't think Raya would get the same treatment. I think if someone came in and took Raya's place, almost be fine. That you wouldn't get the same media backlash, possibly not the same fan backlash. But at the same time, I would highlight there's a lot of people that are annoyed about Arsenal's transfer policies and the fact that we haven't spent in attack. I think if this is done early, this could topple some people over the edge, because especially when we were linked to Huijsen, going and buying a 6 and a goalkeeper straight away before we sign a striker, this will be unpopular with certain people. But so there will be a lot of noise around this one. However, it ultimately depends on what the full window looks like. But there's going to be mixed feelings around signing a goalkeeper regardless. But we do need one.
I know you're right. We do need one. That's a key point here. I mean, I watched Tommy Sepford, and although that he's very young, you can see that he's miles off it. Neto this season was like, let's not even go there. But so we do need it. It's so important. But you're absolutely right. I think if Arsenal's first signing, even before like Zubimendi, was Garcia, I think that Twitter would break. I actually think it would break with the meltdown from Arsenal fans. So, but this is so necessary. It doesn't matter what striker you have, Adam, or what wingers that you have at your football club. If your main goalkeeper goes down and you don't have a backup, you're going to lose football matches. It's as simple as that. So it's, for me, it is important. But so your next one.
Yes, Christian Mosquera, Valencia centre-back, 20 years old, a big boy as well. And what I like about him is he can play on the right and left side of centre-back. He is fairly two-footed. I would say he's a good ball player. He's not as smooth as Saliba. He wins the ball very well. He intercepts very well, blocks the ball very well. The timing of his tackles impresses me a lot. There's a rawness, as you would expect from a 20-year-old. But I think that what we probably need in the centre-back position is someone who is a bit raw, who is a development player, because going out and buying someone who is 25, for example, I just don't see a 25-year-old who's going to want to come in and compete. And especially with Saliba and Gabriel, I think this is one of the advantages City have had. Although John Stones was a great player and Ruben Diaz, they're neither of them have ever been in the kind of top 5 centre-backs in the world, whereas we've got 2 of those. I would argue Liverpool probably have the other 2, and then you're looking at a few others competing for that other spot. The level of those 2 is insane. So you're going to have to get someone who's wanting to come in and develop and learn and get those minutes. Mosquera's played a lot for Valencia this season. He's been playing for Spain under 21s, but he is someone who wouldn't cost a huge amount, and I think would be almost like a Tomiyasu type signing in terms of he can play multiple positions and two-footed, versatile, and could fill in and take minutes off Saliba and Gabriel, because I think the reality is Saliba has played far too many minutes this season, and Gabriel as well. Obviously, he's coming back from an injury, but he is. We've just assumed Gabriel will be available for every game for almost 5 years now, and I think Gabriel will probably come back as strong, and I think Saliba, after a summer off, will come back really strong as well. But I think we just need to be a bit smarter at the back with rotation in this position. And the reality is, we're not going to be able to sell Tomiyasu because he's not going to be back until December. We're also in a position where we can't rely on him. So we have to sign someone. Yes, we've got a name there, but we don't actually have a body that we can use in Tomiyasu.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and you broke it down perfectly. And just to add on that, I don't think it's a coincidence that the injuries that Arsenal have had this season, for me, it is just purely down to not having the squad depth and overplaying minutes on these players. But you're absolutely right with Gabriel. I've just assumed that he's going to be able to play every minute of every game. But he's played too much and his body's broken down, and so this is another reason for like having these 2 players. So for me, you're absolutely right. It's game management from Arteta needs to be there to minimise that.
Yeah, I think cluster injuries have been a major issue as well, where we've had Ben White went down, so Timbers had to play far too many minutes. Ben White's come back, so Timbers needed surgery, but Ben White went down because Tomiyasu was out. And the frustrating thing is, we signed Timber to reduce the strain on Ben White, and then Timber did his ACL. Timber comes back from his ACL. Ben White requires surgery because we've had to play him so much. Tomiyasu is usually averages around 30 games a season. So whilst people say he's always injured, he always plays when he's available. And I think he's been quite a big miss this season. And yes, he's got injuries, but I would always put him in that Joe Gomez category where he's someone that comes in and you can rely upon him. And that's unfortunately a big loss. And I think that's happened across the pitch as well. So we know like Zinchenko's always prone to an injury. Calafiori's had multiple this season. If you look at our attackers, again, it was cluster injuries. You lose 4 players in one go, and you're really stretching those that are available to literally run themselves into the ground, and that's an issue.
Yeah, 100%. I saw a stat just on Tomiyasu, and Tomiyasu was out injured, and months later, Rodri went out with an ACL. Rodri has came back from that same ACL, and Tomiyasu is still months away from being back.
Yeah,
It's
I think
just,
with Tomiyasu, the reports are that it's patella tendonitis, which is an extremely difficult condition to deal with, and one that quite often is a lifetime condition. And the Arsenal have tried different methods to try and get him fit, and the surgery wasn't actually done until midway through the season. And I think that was a last resort because there's no guarantee the surgery works. It's not like an ACL where you're kind of rebuilding the tendon. The tendonitis is something where the risk of success, well, the success rate just isn't anywhere near as high. So it is very much a gamble whether it works or not. So yeah, hopefully Tomiyasu can come back, but this could be a career-long injury that he suffers from.
it's a shame because I agree with you. I think he's absolutely outstanding, and he always gives you a minimum of a 7 or an 8 out of 10 when he is available. Your next player.
Yes, Tariq Mitchell. So he's available in a free transfer this summer. I think he's a really, really solid player. He's not a name that I think people would go wild for, but when I look at the transfer budget and what we need this summer, I think this is one of those smart signings that we haven't been making, where I think we've been very good at getting players in a certain price bracket, but we haven't always been good at making shrewd signings. And I think Jorginho is one of the few that we've made where it's been low value, high return. And I look at Mitchell, and this is win-win for me because you mentioned Kieran Tierney. We don't have someone that can do those overlaps, can get the ball in the box. This is what Mitchell does very well. He's got an unbelievable injury record where he's just always available to play. I think he should have gone to the Euros last summer, and he's someone that will get up and down the pitch very well. He's reliable. I'm not saying he's an elite fullback by any stretch, but he's a very, very solid Premier League player. And sometimes I think that's what you need. You need a player that can come in, and this signing allows Calafiori to be used at centre-back and Miles to be rested, for example. It allows Miles to potentially play in midfield, depending on where we're at. And I also think if he comes in and it doesn't quite work out, he's an English player that has proved himself year on year in the Premier League. He's 25 years old, just about to turn 26. You're going to sell him for at least 20, 25 million in a year's time. This, in my opinion, is probably the lowest risk-free transfer that you could go out and get with a potential of a really high return. And if it doesn't work out for Arsenal, there's going to be a financial return that we'll get in a year's time.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And also, as we did speak about Tierney, it's good to have the option of inverted or your typical fullback. So I agree. This one doesn't need much introduction.
No, so Zubimendi is one of those where it seems David Ornstein said that Arsenal are acting like it's a done deal. I am going to wait until he's literally holding up the shirt because we know Zubimendi's history. I think it's time for him to leave Sociedad, and I think he will leave this summer. I am conscious that Madrid could come in last minute, given his connections with Xabi Alonso, who coached him at Sociedad's B team and has been his mentor for quite a long time. For me, this is an essential cog for Arsenal. One of the big problems this season has been our build-up, where we do build up too slowly. We have that extra touch. As great of a turner as Partey is, he's superb at receiving, dropping the shoulder, going off with his left foot. But he does take multiple touches before releasing, and he can evade defenders. He can play through the press very easily. Martin Zubimendi's a one-touch player, both feet, left, right. He isn't without his weaknesses. He doesn't have the legs to get back on transition. I would compare him a lot to Jorginho in that sense, but he's got a very, very good left and right foot, and I would say his left foot's much better than Jorginho's. Whether he's at the level Jorginho was at Napoli, I'm not sure, because I think people forget how good Jorginho was. But this is a player for me that solves a lot of problems in terms of the speed that the ball's moved up the pitch. He's a very good counter presser, very good interceptor as well. He reads the game very well because of his lack of physique. And that's meant that he's had to play with his brain, very similar to Jorginho in that sense. The two of them Jorginho can counter press very well. And again, he's very good at getting that foot in, nicking the ball. So this is one that I think is a very, very important signing. I think this really, really releases Declan Rice. It allows him to be the box-to-box midfielder that we saw last season. And I think Declan Rice has stepped up a level this year. And with Zubimendi beside him, you kind of get what you got with him and Jorginho, in that Rice has a really stable partner beside him that goes both ways. One of the weaknesses with Zubimendi is he tends to kind of see the side he's looking at, as opposed to Rice is very good at giving big switches when he's not looking. But Partey has that weakness as well. Thomas Partey very naturally looks towards the right. Zubimendi's a bit more left-sided bias. I think that's something that Arsenal will need to work on, because Rice is also a left-sided bias player. But I think this could help Arsenal, because I think our right-hand side is very strong, but it can be congested at times, where our left-hand side can be a bit underutilized. So this is a player that I think helps with central build-up and improving our left-hand side as well, and the speed we get the ball out to our wingers and our eights.
Yeah, I agree. Just two questions on him. First one, age. Do you think he's coming into his prime?
Yeah, absolutely. I think these players that play with their brain, I think he's someone that you could probably get 8 years out of. And this is kind of the perfect age to buy him at, because you look at Jorginho now, he's about to turn 34. He's not someone that I think at Chelsea he was exposed because of the Chelsea system. Whereas I think Zubimendi's coming into a control-based team, and I think this is the perfect age to get him. Really, you're looking at 5 years at his prime, and then maybe 3 years at a slightly lesser level. Whether he stays for that long, who knows? But this is one, as I said, I'm not getting carried away until he's fully signed, but I'm really, really excited about this signing.
Yeah. And very last question, do you see him as playing in the 6, or because of his left foot, do you see him maybe going over to the 8?
I think he can play either position. There's a bit of like Gundogan in there, where he's not the most athletic 8, but he could definitely play in that role. I see him being a 6 though, and like primarily, possibly he will be used as an 8. We will maybe see him and Rice switch in position a bit. Zubimendi does like to push up towards the box when he's playing as well, so he is an aggressive tempo setter, where he knows when to put his foot in the ball and slow things down. He also knows when to speed things up and get things going very, very fast. And I would say that there's similarities to Rodri. Rodri's another level to most players in that position, but he's someone that I think in that double pivot with Declan Rice, with Rice slightly more advanced, more box-to-boxy, this could be a really, really fruitful partnership for Arsenal.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think also he did play with Rodri in the Spain team that just like dominated the Euros.
Yeah, well, he came on for Rodri in the final, so I don't think they ever played on the pitch at the same time. But he has played a lot with Marino, who obviously was at Sociedad with them, and they've played together for a long, long time, built a very, very good partnership there. And I believe he's also played with Odegaard when he was at Sociedad too.
That's correct. And also another player that you're bringing in also played in that same team, but we could speak about that at that time.
Yes.
Yes. Right, this one, I don't know much about this player at all.
So Lucien Agome is a player that I really like. He's at Sevilla. He's he was one of those, I guess, wonder kitty, super high prospect teenagers when he was at Inter. It didn't quite work out. It was one of those where a lot of Inter fans don't think that he was given a fair crack whilst he was there, but they did have very good players in his position. He's gone to Sevilla, really, really built a career for himself. And he's also 23 now. So he's at the age where he's really showing himself. He's got that consistency and his game's become a bit more rounded. He uses the ball very similar to Thomas Partey. He's big, he's powerful. He's not as smooth as Partey. That's the first thing I would say. He can turn away from defenders very well, or attackers, depending on where he receives. His passing is progressive. He doesn't have, as I said, the same smoothness in his turn, but he does turn very well. And I think he's a high prospect that's ready to come in now. So people will point at Sambi Lokonga. This guy's a lot more experienced than Lokonga. He's a lot more physically imposing. And he's also more of a 6. Whereas I think one of the issues with Lokonga is he's not quite a 6 and he's not quite an 8. And Arsenal have very defined positions. And I also think Lokonga is a good player that it just hasn't quite worked out for. So with Agome, I think he's someone who comes in and as a backup rotation option with Zubimendi, really, really smart signing. And he's someone, if you search for him online, you'll see comps of him against very, very good teams and how well he performs. So he's no mug, and he's someone that I think comes in for, you probably pay around 20 million for him, which isn't a huge amount.
Yeah, I like the fact that you've done that, and it is kind of low amounts. So if it doesn't work out, you're not making a massive financial loss like we have seen in the past. So yeah, but it's good. This player, Adam, speak to me.
Yeah, one of the things I love about Rodrigo is I was a huge Alexis Sanchez fan. When Alexis was at the club, I was doing around 25 games a season, so I was there most weeks and most weekends. It was mainly only kind of midweek games that I wasn't able to make it to, and Alexis was one of the players that I just loved watching. And Rodrigo receives between the lines very, very well in the same way as Alexis does. He's got a trick in his locker. He's got very, very nice ball striking off both feet. But he's also played as a right winger for the last couple of years at Real Madrid. But his real position is a left winger. And if you look at his goal scoring record when he's played on the left, it's phenomenal. So people will point to the number of goals he scored, but he's playing in a team where he's had to platform Mbappe and Vinicius and even Jude Bellingham to a degree. Most of his teammates speak extremely highly of him. And I think in terms of true level raisers who may well genuinely be on the market, he is one of those that are out there. I think he's been left out of the Brazil squad because of physical and mental fatigue. I think he's someone, again, he's played a lot of minutes recently. Could do with a summer off, but for me, he's just as good as there is out there. He's one of those market opportunities that I would say, because in terms of pure profile that I would have looked at before the window, and this is one that I've been thinking about. I've been talking. We've got an Arsenal group on Twitter that we talk in quite a bit, and we've been discussing Rodrigo a lot. I think in terms of the pure profile Arsenal need, if you want an isolated left winger that runs in big spaces, Rodrigo's not that guy. That's a Nico Williams, Rafael Leao, or a Jamie Gittins, someone like that are big sprinters. And Leao's physicality seems to be just dropping slightly, partly down to mentality. Whereas with Rodrigo, I think you have to compromise on that because of what you get. And I think the fact that Arteta is interested in him suggests that that's not necessarily what he is completely locked into. I also say with Arteta, we talk about how he wants to play. But last summer, he tried to get Nico Williams and Benjamin Sesko. Look at those profiles. We don't have either of them in our team. The closest we have to Sesko is Kai Havertz in terms of where he receives, where he likes to turn, the areas he likes to operate in. But Havertz and Sesko are very, very different players. And I think we're so locked into what we see every week that if you look at what Arteta's tried to bring into the club in attack, it tells you a story in itself with what he would like to do. And I think Martinelli, for example, is a very different player to Rodrigo. Rodrigo is a great player at breaking down low blocks because he can operate in such tight spaces. And as I said, he's got that trick in his locker. He can receive with multiple players around him, pop it off to a teammate, get into the box. Very composed once he gets in there as well. And for me, this is one of the signings that I'm very hopeful could happen, and I would absolutely love to see it because this is the kind of player that you buy a match ticket to go and watch.
100%. Honestly, I could hear you speak about him for hours, Adam, because you broke that down brilliantly. This is the gold dust. This is the gold dust on this Arsenal side. And I actually think if Arsenal were able to bring a player of this standard and this quality into the club, I think that then opens the pathway and the gateway for other top elite players to come to Arsenal. If you want, because the standard is so high. But I love the comparison to Sanchez as well. For me, I want him. If we could have one sign in it, I would take him over any other.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at a few years ago, players like Declan Rice, who we've now got, and Rodrigo, we weren't even being linked to those. And I put a tweet out about that and I got a load of comments. We signed Ozil under Arsene Wenger. He was a whole other level. We did. That was 12 years ago that we bought Mesut Ozil. 11 years ago, we bought Alexis Sanchez. There was about a 9-year gap in between those signings before we bought Declan Rice, where we were not competing at the top table at all. And we were talking before we started recording, this is the level we're at now. We remember what it was like before Arteta took over. Even the last season when we were in the Champions League, we won the FA Cup that season. But every one of us knew that we were papering over the cracks. We didn't make Champions League. We got battered 10-2 by Bayern in the Champions League. And we were a laughingstock. And everyone pointed out that the FA Cup was no longer the trophy it once was. So as much as I want to win trophies, I think if Arsenal finish 5th under Arteta and win the FA Cup or the Carabao, Arteta gets sacked, and that's the reality of it. And I think finishing 2nd is hugely advantageous to the club financially. Champions League semi-final, we can attract more players by getting to the Champions League semi-final than we can by winning a Carabao or an FA Cup or a Europa League, for example.
I agree 100%, Adam, and you couldn't have said that any better. I think the prize pot for winning an FA Cup is £3 million. Now, if you go and win an FA Cup and you bring that £3 million, you're not being able to go out and even consider signing a player like Rodrigo. Where, as you say, with Arsenal getting to the semi-final of the Champs, I think last year we got 90 million. I would imagine the club would take in 100 million from the Champions League this year.
I think we've made an extra 15 million from the previous season, which is a good chunk of change.
Yeah, that is. So that in itself could go and pay the transfer fee for this player.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That shows, and I think you're absolutely right as well. And I think we are pretty much aligned, because if I had the option of Arsenal finishing 5th, 4th in an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup, I wouldn't be satisfied. Yeah. I want Arsenal to be chapping at that door and knocking at that door. And we've finished 2nd, obviously, for the 3rd year. But if you take into context the injuries, etc., and what we've had to face this season, going and adding players like Rodrigo to this current squad just elevates Arsenal to the next level for me.
100%.
Next one. No, I picked him as well.
But
Not being
I think
greedy.
I have to specify, you give me a 300 million budget to spend and ask for how I would spend it as opposed to what I think was realistic. I
Yeah.
don't think realistically we're getting Rodrigo and Isaac. I think it would be a compromise on one of the positions. But look, this is my dream centre forward. I think it is with most people. I was at St James's away for the semi-final and the league game this year, and I have to say, I have never seen Gabriel and Saliba both shaken by Isaac as much, by any striker, the way Isaac shook them. One of the interesting things about St James's is you're so high that you can see everything. So I was watching Isaac's movement and they couldn't take their eyes off him. There was at no point where they were thinking, it's fine, he's over there. They were watching him the whole game. I've watched them at height against a lot of strikers, and they've been comfortable letting strikers drift and thinking we'll deal with them. With Isaac, the two of them were glued to him the whole game, like eyes constantly glancing at wherever he moved. When he got the ball, there was a panic in both of them that I haven't seen against any other striker. It's the smoothness he plays with, the way he strikes the ball, the confidence, the swagger, all those things. There's a Thierry Henry-ness about him. He's not as good as Thierry Henry, but he's a phenomenal player. And I did want him before he went to Newcastle, but I think one of the things that Newcastle don't get credit for is how they've developed him. Eddie Howe's done a phenomenal job there, and the player that they got scored 11 goals in his first season. Gabriel Jesus scored 11 goals that season and missed 4 months with injury. So that shows where Isaac's come from and where he is now. So there's a lot of people that say we had the chance to buy Isaac. He cost 20 million more than Jesus, and we didn't see Jesus's injury troubles being as bad as they were. So when you look at the player we got in Gabriel Jesus, I think that's been one of the biggest problems with the project is Jesus breaking down repeatedly. We've got a phenomenal player there, but he's just not been able to stay fit to the point where times last season he looked like he was done. And that was scary watching him. Before he kind of had that redemption in around December, January, he looked like we just needed to get rid of him. But yeah, with Isaac, it's one of those, I'm not sure. I just don't see it happening, but this would be the absolute dream. I think Isaac is the only striker on the market that I think you go out and pay that big fee and you guarantee goals, and also the build-up play that we need, the runs off the ball, all the other things. I think his aerial abilities improved a lot since he's been at Newcastle. So training with the likes of Dan Burn and Sven Botman and those kind of players, it's improved him a lot. I look at the next tier of strikers, which is your Sesko, Gyökeres, Ekitike, Ollie Watkins, and the truth is, Gyökeres has scored a lot of goals. There's a lot of red flags with his game, and we don't really know how it would translate from Portugal to the Premier League. I still think he scores goals, but I don't think there's as big of a hit rate as people are. So people are so sure about that signing. And Sesko, I think, is a more close version to Isaac, but there's still a lot of weaknesses in his game as well. I think the other strikers, it all depends on the price tag. With Isaac, it depends on his availability. If we could get him, I would go and pay the money that it took to get him. And whereas Gyökeres, if he's 55 million and you're buying a Rodrigo, I can live with that. Same with Sesko. I don't think Sesko is worth the 80 million mark. Ekitike is in that same category. I actually think he's more refined and closer to Isaac than the others. And even though he's very young, but I think in terms of if you're looking the closest guarantee to go and win you something, I think Ollie Watkins is actually the one that probably guarantees you success faster. And again, if we went out and bought Watkins and got Rodrigo, I would be very happy with that because for me, Watkins comes in, he's got very few miles on the tank. Yes, he might be turning 30, but you could get him for potentially around 35 to 40 million, get 3 good years out of him. He's English. You probably sell him for 15 million, even at 33. But I think it's one of those, you need either an elite winger or an elite striker, but we need to address both positions, and the dream would be Alexander Isaac.
I completely agree, and I don't think that. Well, a lot of Arsenal fans just think the problem is the striker, but I absolutely agree, Adam. You're 100% spot on that left wing. We need someone there, and the thing I did forget to pick up on was when we watch Saka playing, we see two, three men like doubling up or tripling up on Saka. If you had a quality player like Rodrigo on the other wing, teams wouldn't be able to do it. So
100%.
you're actually opening the pitch up, fully opening the pitch up. So I agree with you. I would minimise my striker. By like Isaac would be my dream as well, Adam. But as you say, you said it perfectly. I would take a Watkins and a Rodrigo. I would take that. A million% I would take that.
Yeah, I mean, I would take any of the strikers. I think every striker on the market, Isaac, Watkins, Ekitike, Sesko, or Gyökeres, they all come in and improve Arsenal. They just improve us by varying degrees. So it's whereas I think he's the one that takes you to a sensational level. And I would also say Liverpool have gone out and got Florian Wirtz. They have really stamped their ambition very early. I think Arsenal need to go out and really deliver this summer. As we mentioned, last summer wasn't anywhere near good enough, but it was a very dry window all round. I think we should have gone for Desiree Doué, but we didn't, and here we are. So this window, the dominoes are moving. I mentioned Bournemouth have already sold Huijsen. Madrid have signed 2 players. Liverpool are close to signing 3. Arsenal are potentially very close to signing Zubimendi. The clubs are clearly doing business early. There is a break in the transfer window as well, so getting these deals done early is going to be very important. And I think what we'll see is Arsenal maybe addressing a couple of positions very, very early, and then there will be others where we will leave it to possibly the second half of the window to see and see who becomes available, where the dominoes fall. And also, there is a chance Martinelli could be sold or Trossard could be sold. So let's see what we need when those players are sold. There's always the chance that a big bid comes in from somewhere and it's an offer that you can't refuse. So you end up shopping for a position that you didn't expect to be looking at.
Yeah, that's actually a thing. You could have just wait to go on to it. This is the players that you've brought in, and while I would say of the Isaac, I would imagine that there would be a chunk added onto that fee, but you do have a lot of players there that what you could have sold, like the Trossard, Lukonga, Tavares. We've still got Nelson on the books. I mean, you could have brought in a lot more money. So this is realistic for what I asked you to do.
Yeah. Well, essentially, I've just sold what I needed to top up the kitty, but I do think we'll try and get rid of Reece Nelson. I think we will let one of Trossard or Martinelli go. Let's wait and see which one. I would prefer to let Trossard go. Again, with squad regeneration, I think let the 30-year-old go. But then again, Martinelli will be sold for a huge profit. And part of me thinks maybe Martinelli just needs a change of scenery, a new challenge, something to revitalize him a bit and get him going. But yeah, let's see where we're at. I think there will be outgoings, and I think we may be hit with a surprise. But ultimately, I think we need to just do the business and start getting players in quickly.
You're absolutely right, and do you know what? I could kind of maybe see it for Martinelli as well, and I think the reason for it is I think Arsenal would be able to command a fee of 50 to 60 million for him.
Yeah.
Which is just like a massive profit. So I can see where you're coming from. It's just I thought it would be Trossard going at him, if I'm being honest.
So did I.
But I've heard rumours that he's been offered a new contract. So that kind of thrown me back a bit as well. It's like, is it Martinelli possibly that's going to be moved on? So, yeah, just coming to your 25-man squad. You've always, as you said, you sold 25 million. It would be a hell of a lot more than that. I think Kivior himself would demand because of the game time that he's had. We would get more than 25 million alone just for Kivior without the rest of the players. But do you want to just go through your starting 11 and your backups?
Yeah, well, I would start with I don't believe in starting 11s. So I think that you need a strong squad because there's so many minutes available, and your strongest 11 picks itself based on availability and form in the biggest games. We mentioned Lewis Skelly. No one predicted him being an undoubted starter against Real Madrid and teams like that.
Yeah.
And this is why I think players show themselves as the season go on. Injuries lead to opportunities for others, and it's on that player to grab them. Kivior's done that, and he's kept his place. Like, if Kivior hadn't have performed, Calafiori would have walked in and taken that shirt. So it's on the player to grab the shirt. I think White and Timber will share a lot of minutes. Someone like Mosquera helps get that kind of rotation between Gabriel and Saliba. Calafiori, I think, can play multiple positions. Someone like Mitchell, as I said, gives you just different options with rotation and an overlapping fullback.
Yeah.
I've already discussed Zubimendi and Agome. I think Rice and Mourinho's going to be a very important player again. The minutes will be there. Arteta really trusts him. One of the things I've got is a theory that I need to look into a bit more, but I think in terms of rotation players, Arteta trusts dual winners and very clever players more than he trusts other players. So I think the minutes are very much going to be there for Mourinho, regardless of who we sign. Jesus on the right, I'm hoping that he comes back probably November and he is able to offer something. He definitely has quality. The 8-10 position with Odegaard and Nwaneri, I would also put Havertz in that. I think Kai Havertz is going to start virtually every game, regardless of who we sign. Yep. Either as a striker or a midfielder. He's just so important to what Mikel Arteta wants to do. Rodrigo's the dream. Let's wait and see what happens there. I put Martinelli in on the assumption we sell Trossard, but Trossard could be the backup on that side. Then Isaac and Havertz. So I think for me, that's a fairly balanced-ish team. The worry is, I think if we sell Martinelli, I'm going to be greedy and say I would like another winger on top of it, just because, to be honest, I would have been happy to sell Martinelli and Trossard, bring in Rodrigo and Gittins, and you've got a big space runner and a small space destroyer in the form of Rodrigo. So yeah, I think that gives you enough variety. And then you've added in, you've got some academy players to come up, and I haven't included Tomiyasu because I don't know when he's really going to be back.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think there's enough in that team to get you through at least 2 competitions this season. And I would like to see us just play a more rotated team in the Carabao Cup. We did it against Bolton and Preston, but I'd like to see it continue against the better sides as well, just because I don't think Arsenal have the ability to go for 4 competitions. I'm not sure anyone does now with the extra Champions League games.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point and broken down. I was actually at the Carabao Cup semi-final at Newcastle as well. A horrible place to watch football. Honestly, it's, see, when people say that you're up in the gods, you literally are. I made a joke that I pulled my hamstring on the way up because it was that bad. It was really that bad. Your academy players, obviously, you've got Tommy Setford as your third choice goalkeeper.
Yes, I think Tommy is probably ready to be that. He's done it for a lot of this season. He's going to be the one that I would be putting in, and the other academy players, Max Diamond. So he's had a mixed time at the under-17 Euros. First game, he looked very good. Second game, he had a decent first half. Really struggled in the second and got hooked on 70. But I think Max is someone that, a bit like Ethan Nwaneri could overplay at 21 level and 17s when he played in this tournament last year. I think Max is a bit too individual because he's so much better than those around him. At Arsenal, he's got a bit more chemistry with his teammates than he does with England, but I think stepping up to the next level, it just accelerates your growth. And I think Max is ready for that. So it looks like he's going on the Asia tour anyway. That's been confirmed by a few people. And yeah, it's absolutely insane. He's 15 years old, and just the talent that this boy has. I don't know what level of player we're looking at. I've seen incredible players break through before, but I can't remember Arsenal having someone as good as Diamond at that age. Nwaneri wasn't that good at 15. Saka was nowhere near that good. So I think it's one of those that's just embrace it and enjoy it and see where we are in a few years and not get carried away because, as I said, he is 15.
I've kind of, like, I picked him as well, and the worry is that he obviously can't sign a professional contract until he's 16. So this one is important. So the pathway, Arsenal kind of do need to be showing him a kind of pathway, but I have heard reports he will be training with the first team next season.
He's done it for most of this season as well. So,
Right, okay.
So yeah, most days he trains with the first team, and he has been left out of games when he's been involved with the first team as well. So yeah, he's been training with the first team since he was 14, which is pretty insane. I know, seeing United things in the past, David Beckham was involved with in and around the first team when he was really young as well. It really is just insane. And to be doing this at 15, you are talking, if you look at Lamine Yamal, it was similar with him. And so let's see if Diamond can be anywhere near that good. It would be insane. But yeah, as I said, I'm not going to get carried away. I'm going to see where it goes. And as you mentioned, the professional contract, it can't be signed. So there's always that doubt as well of how long they'll stay at the club. So it's a risky one with players that age because you develop them, fast track them, and could lose them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why it's so important that Arsenal do, because we have lost other academy players, Obi Martin for one, Haven as well, went to both of them Man United. So we have lost these players, so it is important that there is a clear pathway for your top stars to come through.
Yeah, I would also say though that the top players really show themselves. We've mentioned Miles Lewis-Skelly this season, and he's been my favorite player to watch. He's someone that's come in and he's grabbed his shirt, he's got his opportunity, and he's grabbed it with both hands. Ethan Nwaneri has done the same, and there are very few players over or under 21 who have played more minutes than Ethan this season. Even Connor Bradley has only played 40 minutes more than Ethan this season, and that's pretty insane. A lot of the players are a few years older than him. The easy thing is to compare him to Yamal. Yamal's played over 4,500 minutes this season for Barcelona alone. He's played more for Spain on top. Saka has never ever topped 4,000 minutes. So if you think about that, we talk about overplaying Saka. Yamal has played around 600 minutes more than Saka's ever played in a single season. Salah's done that on multiple occasions as well. And Yamal is an outlier. He's not the norm. And Nwaneri is also an outlier. The minutes he's getting at Arsenal this season are really, really impressive. What he's done is insane. And I think Arteta's managed him very well in that when Odegaard was out, rather than just throwing him in, Arteta understood that he didn't understand the out of possession parts of that role. And the pressure would have just been solely on Nwaneri to deliver. And he took that away. He protected him. Probably his gut was just throw him in. Then he did throw him in. And then his performance started dipping. You could see it. If you're inside the Emirates, you'll see Nwaneri cramping up. It becomes quite obvious when he starts. It's around 65, 70 minutes. 80 minutes, if he's still on the pitch, he's stretching out that quad, or his calves a lot. And I think Arteta's done a very good job to protect him in that sense and let him recover.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. But there's a lot of the Arsenal fan base think that Arteta's doing it wrong because he should be playing him. But I agree with what you've said. And people forget what age Ethan actually is. He is
Absolutely.
still just still a kid. this has been absolute phenomenal, Adam, and I knew it would be. I knew it would be because you're a legend, bro. Brilliant team, and I do think that team would do a lot of damage in the Premier League and the Champions League, for sure. It really, really would. Do you want to just to give us a bit